Hello, everyone, and welcome now, day number 19 of our Lenten reading through the book of Exodus, 40 chapters through the 40 days of Lent. Today we find ourselves at chapter number 19. The people of Israel have made their way out into the wilderness, and they in Sinai, and here they approach the mountain. Um, we've remarked on this before, that the high places of high elevation were often viewed as being sacred in the ancient world, and even parts of the modern world. In other cultures, mountains are viewed very sacred. We find some of this in Genesis. We find this in Exodus, when Moses was called from a mountain. And at this point, the people have no other real holy site that they are associated with. They don't have a temple or a tabernacle or anything else sacred or liturgical. And so now is when we've seen their group identity and formation already. Now we're going to observe their liturgical identity and formation, as it were. And so here, and remember, this is on the heels of Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, who tells him you need to organize things a bit better here. And now things are going to be organized. So Moses goes up to this mountain. God says in verse number 4, you see what I did to Egypt. I took care of my people coming out of Egypt. Verse 5, if you'll diligently listen to me and keep my covenant, you will be my special possession, and you will be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. And so we see here that Israel, the collective now, their vocation has been defined, a kingdom of priests. It's a special role, but what is the function of a priest? To be a mediator, a go-between the people and to God. And so when we go back to Genesis, is it 11, 12, there when Abram at the time is approached by God, gives a covenant, and we find all these elements to the covenant. But the purpose was so that through you all nations would be blessed. And now we see the function of God's elect covenant people, Israel, was to fulfill that objective, to function as a kingdom of priests, to be God's priests to everyone. And so Moses, in verse 7, he summons the elders of Israel, and he tells them what God has told them, which is in verse 9, that God is going to come in a dense cloud. And so that when the dense cloud comes, the people are going to hear God's voice somehow and believe that God is connected to and attached to Moses. However, before God is going to reveal himself, he tells Moses to have the people sanctify themselves, wash their clothes, and be ready for the third day. So in a world where, clearly they did not have washing machines, they did not have running water, they did not have an abundance of clean water, they're now to wash their clothes and make themselves ready. This is a liturgical act of self-purification. These acts, there's a purpose behind these acts. They're not just so God can look at people in their Sunday best, in our vernacular, but the purpose and the role of this. And when we're in the Old Testament, when we're in any part of Scripture, when we're here in Exodus, it's about discovering the purpose and role behind what the people are instructed to do. Washing their clothes prepares them for the seriousness and the sacredness of the moment. In fact, God is going to come down, it says, onto Sinai. There has to be boundaries set up for the people, says God in verse 12, that no one can go up to the mountain or touch it. If anyone touches the mountain, they're going to be put to death. What's going on here? Again, there's a role behind this, a purpose, and that is for them to understand what is sacred. If something is not evidenced to be sacred, then we will never take it and treat it sacredly, what the imagery is supposed to symbolize. And so Moses does this. Verse 14, the people washed their clothes. He said, be ready. He said, do not even approach your wives for marital relations in verse 15. So the people are going to be pure all the way around. The third day there was thunder and lightning and a dense cloud and a very loud horn what sounded, and all the people in the camp, they trembled. Here they went to the foot of the mountain, and the Sinai, the mountain, was completely covered in smoke because God had descended upon it in a fire, and the whole mountain, it shook violently here. God's talking to Moses, and Moses is talking to God here. God shows up in fire. Again, there's this imagery that we're going to find again. That this mountain at this point is a temple scene. We'll see it when the tabernacle is dedicated in just a little while. So verse 20, the Lord came down to Sinai, and the Lord summoned Moses to the top of the mountain. The Lord said to Moses, verse 21, warn the people, lest they try to force their way to the Lord and look, and they perish. Let the priests also who approach the Lord sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break through against them. Remember, there's here the concept, there's going to be boundaries. Without boundaries in this social context, the people can hardly take it seriously. Verse 23, Moses says, the people are not able to come up to Mount Sinai because you warned us and set boundaries to set it apart. And God says to him, go get down and then come up, and Aaron with you, but do not let the priests and the people force their way through to come up to the Lord, lest he break against them. So Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. Quite robust imagery here, as God, who has made himself known through his spokesman Moses, through his mighty acts against the Egyptians and on behalf of his collective, now shows up in this significantly profound way to where everyone is able to see something spectacular that is occurring. Here, what it's going to do, in part, is it's going to be another affirmation of Moses. Hey, Moses can come, and Aaron can come, but not everyone can come. Again, what's important right now, as we see these people are already some rebellious types, murmuring and complaining, we will see furthermore how rebellious they are. Right now, they need boundaries. That you can look at Israel here in terms of their identity as a collective. They're still in infancy, right? They're just newly formed as a collective, as a nation, as a group of people. And what do you have to, when you are rearing children, what do you have to set if not boundaries? The idea is that the more that the child grows and matures, the boundary markers are reset, replaced, reordered, restructured. But very early on, there has to be boundaries. So with infants, we put baby gates up, right? So they can't maneuver from one room into the next. Other things that they are unable to do. We might put an infant in in one of those mobile playpens, a mobile crib, so that they can play within a certain confined space, lest they go and touch anything and put anything in their mouth, lest they hurt themselves. The people here, they need these boundary markers in their infancy. They need to recognize what is holy and what is sacred. And that's not recognized unless there be a distinction of conduct and operation. So now we have a liturgical introduction to the people of Israel, as well as a vocational introduction that they are to serve as God's priests, God's go-between. And so these are exciting features, and I will meet you again tomorrow as we go into chapter number 20. And at that point, we will have finished with the first half of this book of Exodus. Thank you for joining with me. Look forward to seeing you again.